some Neanderthal had the magical idea of blowing through a reed to entertain the children one night in a cave somewhere. Then, in the blink of an eye, civilization.
And are you that next visionary?
I'm glad you said it.
For as long as I can remember, I had dreams about the end of the world. When I think I'm about to perish with every other living thing, for a split second, I wonder, what did I do? If I leave nothing behind, if none of us does, what is our legacy? What was our life's work? Was it enough? Am I a failure? What does it mean for someone to fail? What does it mean for an institution to fail? Can a work of art truly fail? Is this a failure? Because it didn't make enough money? Didn't win enough awards? Can you look at this and tell me it doesn't work? If you can you tell me where the 3/4-century-old director went wrong? The man who gave us our wretched popular cinema. Was he wrong to give this to us? Do you think he'd take it back? If the world were to end, what do you think he would think? The hearts and minds he changed, the people he made cry, the way he took apart what had been and rebuilt it in his image.
Jets!
And now, a thrice-removed, bastardized version of the entertainments he gave us is all there is. Where does a movie that looks like this come from? Even knowing everything I know, I'm still blown away. I've seen this more times than I can count already. This much good, this much talent. A director in his 7th decade of life. His veteran crew, his trusted director of photography. All of them painting their masterpiece with kids from nowhere.
Pick one.
I can't pick just one.
Suppose you had to. Suppose you were stranded on a desert island.
Don DeLillo.
DeLillo? Over Pynchon? Over David Foster Wallace?
You told me to pick one. I like DeLillo.
I mean, I like him too, but over Pynchon?
Pynchon is great. Why are you on my ass about this when you put a gun to my head and forced me to pick one?
Because you picked the wrong one! Feel free to get in here whenever you want.
How can I be upset at him for this culture when he's given me so much? One of a million viewers who owe him wrenching emotional truths, what he calls honest tears. Decades now of fluttering heartstrings.
Indiana,
And watering eyes.
let it go.
He helped create a culture that has moved past him. Turned his best movie into a footnote to mediocrity. Maybe once upon a time we needed silly entertainment as counter-programming. To feel ridiculous, to revel in bad, immature behavior, so to speak. To prove our dads, our teachers, cops, bosses, the moral authority, to prove them all wrong for 2 hours, that it is okay to misbehave and like it. Because high art and entertainment alike, they weren't always like that. We once called ours a darker culture, to go with times that couldn't seem to get any worse, and yet managed to. And now, millions of people will chastise you, tell you you belong dead, if you say that you don't like the last interminable thing they adore. Try it. Use the proper nouns on social media. See what happens. See what they say to you. over a great, lurching, unfeeling, false nothing. I asked Molly Haskell, who once wrote a book about Spielberg, what she made of all of this. I started by asking her about Empire of the Sun, one of the Spielberg films made to meet culture head-on, instead of subverting it. I knew it was the one Spielberg film for which she had made an exception. I once saw her introduce it with a dear friend. I knew that she and her husband, the great critic Andrew Sarris, agreed upon its excellence. Empire of the Sun. Just loved it when I first saw it, and still do. Among other things, it may be the greatest portrait ever of a child going through a war. At first, the unadulterated thrill of it, his obsession with planes leading to admiration for the Japanese pilots, the bitter, but for him still exciting, occupation, and finally the inevitable growing up which expands his view of the world and moral compass, but brings about alienation from his family. Incredible. What I can't explain is why others don't feel the same way. I've thought many times about doing an essay on Empire, as I have many Spielberg films, but it didn't seem right. After all, Steven Spielberg was the man who invented our cinema, not all of it, but the mode now in which every movie is made. Every childish fantasia is greenlit to the roar of approval from the masses. I think often of the lingering, dreadful beauty of Empire of the Sun, what it's like to say goodbye to childhood, and thus to the artifacts of childhood, the films especially, what we once had, what we once believed, to see it vanish.
In a way, it's our runway!
No, it's their runway, Jim! Try not to think so much. Try not to think so much!
I can't remember what my parents looked like. I used to play bridge with my mother in her bedroom. She used to comb her hair. I'd watch her. She had dark hair.
And yet, how succinctly Molly Haskell summed up the great project of my life as an artist. Why doesn't anyone feel the same way? The amount of times I've said that same sentence, well, we know. It's at least 100. 8 years ago, I turned in my first Unloved, on a film that has since been taken off the scales of cultural acceptance. It was publicly hated, it was privately loved, and now it's just a thing, like so many other works of art that once shook the foundations of the earth. Its creator disavows it, and he seems to have wandered as far away from the young man who made it as anybody could have. He is now of the culture. Perhaps it's more accurate to say he has been carried away by it. He lost himself in it. A wave has come to collect most of our artists. A biblical flood. And once it is washed through, movies won't be art anymore, whatever they once were. Movies are product to too many now. A pound of dough, malleable carbohydrates with no name, squealing echoes long silenced of whatever this once was. But it's not film anymore. Some still believe it. The ones who make art, we might think twice about. The search for a new film language was the most thrilling thing in the world to me. When I was first entering the world of criticism, I saw it all the time. Artists trying to be bigger and stranger than their peers, to make something lasting, to make something brand new, something you've never seen before. That was my flag. Planted on a battle-scarred hill, my calling, my life. What were going to be the first words spoken in new cinematic languages?
Today is Eurydice's 19th birthday. It's a day she never imagined being around to witness. Her teenage years were often full of moments that felt rotten to the core. That was until she met Orpheus. He was 18, a poet, and quickly became the love of her life.
I was at the Chelsea Hotel in September 1977 when a friend called to say that Carl had died. I felt more irritation than shock. Death felt like an interruption, an impudence. The voice was immortal in the poems, and others after me would hear it.
Increasingly, everyone just says the same old words, in a tongue I get no joy divining. Alien 3 was a sequel no one asked for, to a movie no one saw coming, in response to two versions of low American culture. Spielberg, Ridley Scott, James Cameron, David Fincher. Their calling was turning low-born genre into the stuff of legend. But even the people who foster a culture, who create it in front of our eyes, can be marginalized by it. To this day, a film I have made an Unloved about, that I have never organically run into a fan of in the wild. It's a movie by a man who I never thought could fail. Now that's all he ever seems to do, and I couldn't love him more. So why does any of us keep going? Why bother to make art in a culture that increasingly devalues it, reduces the great works of art, to flatter the makers of content? Every day we take off at a run, away from the history of art, the grandest and most effulgent style the medium has ever seen. Why do we beg people to turn around and look behind them, to see what we see? In the years since my first Unloved, I've seen movies I've championed, written about by some of our best critics. I've seen them remixed and revived by fans. I've seen some of the luster of these works, once so full of the potential to change us, return bit by bit. I've seen painfully shot mistakes become what they were always meant to be.
Disconnect me. I could be reworked, but I'll never be top of the line again. I'd rather be nothing.
Something serious, written off as something frivolous, when we were so lucky that we could say no to whatever art we chose. But more often I've seen the people turn away from film as an art form. People have always resented film critics, and I still sometimes wonder why we do this. Why take time every week to champion the works that mean something to me? I'm heartbroken sometimes by what I see happen to my chosen arts, criticism and filmmaking. But I still practice both, even though all I want to do is retreat into the womb of the old fetish objects I love so much, that I know by heart, that taught me what film can be, that I know make me happy, and whose ranks West Side Story will inevitably join, as the popular cinema veers harder away from the image to the blighted plot point.
Gypsy's lying and steal little lady. But you never heard of a gypsy stealing an oil well, did you? Or robbing a bank? Or a gypsy woman double-timing her husband? Or beating up her kid, did you?
It's nothing like that.
Then what is it? You think I can't dance, maybe?
Is this madness? I begged some old friends for clarity. Why do we do this?
For me, the role of the film critic is, as Talking Heads said, same as it ever was. The industry is changing, but that only means that there are more ways for great movies both to be released and to be overlooked in the absence of proper critical attention. Also more ways for the image, for emotion, for experience to be debased by movies in the absence of proper critical opposition. The real object of criticism isn't individual movies, but the cinema itself as an idea and as an ideal. And the unprecedented availability of films from the history of cinema and from around the world now gives critics the opportunity to reconceive the very possibilities of the cinema and look more clearly to its ultimate point, namely the future of the art. Which is why for critics now it's both a time that's very demanding and a time of great possibility.
Well, when we make our movies, Karin and Matt and I sometimes talk about the idea that our ultimate goal is to make something that has the capability of being someone's favorite movie of all time, some specific person, and maybe more than one. And maybe inherently that also includes being specific enough and weird enough and a collision of enough different things that it's not going to be that for other people. And so I think, when we think about their place in the world, I think we are always thrilled with the people who passionately embrace whatever it is and the multiplicity of what it is, and something that's more than one thing, which can often take a while for numbers of people to get their arms around. But we're really grateful when they do.
I asked Jay Hoberman, how lonely does it get? He's one of my favorite writers and inspirations, and so I asked him what he thinks the role of the critic is now. Writing weekly film reviews for The Village Voice was the best job I could imagine, and I used to think about my role all the time. A bit more than 10 years ago, I was terminated. And although I do occasionally write on film, I no longer think about that role at all. His response's matter-of-fact bleakness stunned me, but it shouldn't have. Do any of us hope for better? Dare we allow ourselves that? So why, oh why, do I still do this? Maybe because I don't know how to do anything else, but maybe because I must. Because what is life without art? And what becomes of art without us? Why, when a forced, unwilling monoculture rears its head, why do we take up the call, speak on behalf of the myriad films lost to time, lost to the world, lost to culture? The real art used to be hidden away from the mainstream, away from the issue dramas, away from the live-action cartoons. Now it competes, like an Olympic athlete, with manacled limbs, and every day it seems to fail. But I can't give up. The real art is frequently the art you will never hear about. So look for the critics speaking on behalf of dead languages and dead artists. Look for funerals that turn into wakes, that turn into parties, that turn into possibilities. Look at the films that trend ignored, that still provoke distaste by wedding the disreputable to classical form. Look where no one else will look. Look where there doesn't appear to be a reward. Look at the things that misfit half-published artists, maniacs, and acolytes. Look where the faithful look. Look where studios want you to avoid, where they don't care if you find what you're looking for. Look where madmen like me gesture. But who am I? Nobody.
I can go?
You're not his widow or anything. I'm done with you.
An unremarkable person who answered that call a decade ago. Someone who grew to be synonymous with failure to a few of you. That kind of a thing can weigh on you, even if it only matters to so many. But people like us, we listen. Your favorite artists, your favorite critics, the brightest minds of our age, they'll all be dead in 50 years. What will you remember? The mainstream will last for a moment. But art and the mainstream seldom meet anymore. And art is what survives, not the rest of it. What will you unconditionally love to the very end? I know only this. I know the art that I will never forget. The unloved. The films that gave me my purpose.
You're one beautiful motherfucker.
I keep myself awake some nights wondering about the cinema we almost had but didn't. What has been lost, like all potential energy in the universe, to the should have been, to the hypothetical, to the disinterest of a public reared on spectacle. Molly Haskell said one more thing to me. I still believe Spielberg and Lucas changed cinema irrevocably, though it might have gone in this direction anyway. By returning us to the world of childhood fantasy, giving B-movie tropes, sci-fi, adventure, etc., the A-film treatment, but at a level of stylistic sophistication hitherto reserved for more adult fare. I can acknowledge, she says, the technical brilliance and emotional pull of films like E.T. and Close Encounters of the Third Kind without quite succumbing. By contrast, I respond wholly to AI. In any case, Spielberg's science fiction films dazzle when compared to the endless march of superhero thrillers that have followed. Incidentally, I think West Side Story is a near masterpiece, even if the casting of Tony is not great. It was as if I had heard every word as never before. I felt the anguish, especially for the loser Jets compared to the Puerto Ricans with their families and their optimistic futures. It yanked me out of myself in a way that no film has done for a long time. It is our job now to sort through what we've been given and to say goodbye to what we might have had. I feel comfortable saying there are gifts given to us by one-time masters of the universe, now outcasts. There are gifts that we can simply accept. I mourn for culture, yes, and I think Spielberg does too. Why else would he end his movie dedicated to a departed father with the death of a hero? The death of the man who sets the story in motion. If the world ended tomorrow, I'd still be lucky. I got to see all of this. I got to tell the story of the forgotten. I got to share my love with thousands of people. I got to meet people who care as much as I do. It won't bother me if I never changed anyone's mind. All I ever wanted to do was to help people see in a new way. To see in art beauty they might never have seen otherwise. And if I helped just one person see, then I have done the one job that I ever felt any pride in doing.
I know that I'm paraphrasing my own movie, but there's a line near the end of Ratatouille where the critic Anton Ego says the new needs friends. And that's how it's always been. The new has always needed friends. And if you can be a friend to the new, then you kind of guarantee your own immortality in a way.
In many ways, the work of a critic is easy. We risk very little, yet enjoy a position over those who offer up their work and themselves to our judgment. We thrive on negative criticism, which is fun to write and to read. But the bitter truth we critics must face is that in the grand scheme of things, the average piece of junk is probably more meaningful than our criticism designating it so. But there are times when a critic truly risks something, and that is in the discovery and defense of the new. The world is often unkind to new talent, new creations. The new needs friends. Last night I experienced something new. An extraordinary meal from a singularly unexpected source. To say that both the meal and its maker have challenged my preconceptions about fine cooking is a gross understatement. They have rocked me to my core.
This is the Unloved, and I'm grateful to everyone who came this far with me. Because though the pessimist in me says I will never find the end of the list of works of art that deserved better, the optimist tells me I still have a job to do, and it's the best job in the world.